we've got a debate coming up this week.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if many people know or care,
Yep.
but there's a debate coming up this week. We've got some interesting polling that may be out there. Let's start off with this debate tomorrow between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. How big is this debate really?
I think Senator Cruz cares, and let me make a case for that. So when's the last time you remember, Chad, that a general election debate in Texas between a Republican and Democrat was held on a night that wasn't Friday night when there's high school football going on?
Good
I mean,
point.
right? It was always Rick Perry, and Governor Abbott does the same thing. And so I went back and looked, and I wanted to check myself on this. I went back and looked, and in 2018, you might remember that Senator Cruz and Beto O'Rourke debated more than once. And so one of those debates was also on a Tuesday, like tomorrow night's debate will be. But, of course, the others are always on Fridays. And the reason you have it on Friday is because people are doing other stuff. And if you're the Republican incumbent, you don't really want people to see it. I think that because this is the sole debate, the only debate between Cruz and Allred, that if Cruz agreed to that, which he did, to have this on Tuesday in Dallas, that means his campaign wants people to see it. And we keep seeing these poll numbers. You alluded to that. It looks like a tight race, both in the public polling we've seen and in private polling that I'm aware of. I could believe, and you saw this over the weekend as well, heading into this morning from last night, there was a story about a leaked memo nationally from Republicans who are working to elect Senate candidates where it looked like Senator Cruz is only up by 1 point. I can believe it's tight as that. I would also say that I have no doubt, almost no doubt, that Senator Cruz is going to win his election. But I think if you're looking at the way that the state has changed and the fact that the numbers for former President Trump have tightened up in Texas as well, remember, Trump only won Texas by about 5.5 points last time. If you compare that to years past, go back a decade, it's basically a 10-point swing toward the Democrats. So if you're Senator Cruz, you would be nervous about that. And if you see that, former President Trump's numbers continue to go down in Texas, which we've seen some private polling that I have seen some private polling that indicates that Trump is more at like 51 or 52 in Texas right now. If you're Cruz, that's got to make you worried. So what does Cruz need to do in that debate tomorrow? I think he needs to have at least one moment, and it could be the first one in his career, where a lot of people see him and they like him. There's a lot of even Republicans who would say they don't necessarily like Senator Cruz, but they vote for him because
he's got a problem
right,
with that.
Absolutely. He's just not likable, right? And most Republicans would tell you that they vote for him because they agree with him on issues, right? And remember, in the 2018 campaign against O'Rourke, there were a lot of Republicans in rural areas where O'Rourke was campaigning across all 254 counties. Some of those in the GOP would say they like the guy, but they can't vote for him because he's too liberal, right? So he had the opposite problem. I think, do you remember as a kid in school, and they may still do this, I just don't even know. My daughter is 24, she's grown. But remember when they would give you an egg in school and like, this is your baby, take care of the egg, don't drop the egg. Did y'all ever do that?
Yeah.
Where basically you got to either take care of that or a sack of flour or something.
Yeah.
The kids would walk around with an egg in both hands and just don't drop the egg, don't drop the egg, don't drop the egg. That's kind of the way that Allred is running his campaign. He kind of needs to do that. Just don't mess up. Just don't mess up. And he's trying to just not mess up tomorrow during this debate. So I think Cruz kind of needs a moment where people would like him, where he doesn't look like a jerk, and Allred just kind of needs to just not mess up. We'll see how this plays out. I'll be in Dallas tomorrow to report on this and figure out what happens with it.
Well, and it goes down, and you had mentioned the state changing and whether and we'll see. Republicans still outnumber Democrats, and we'll see
Absolutely
what happens. But you went into the Ted Cruz is not likable thing. And, of course, there are a lot of people who do find Ted Cruz likable. There are Republicans who don't find him likable because he doesn't turn out to the districts a lot. That's a common complaint that I hear, is that people just don't see enough of Ted Cruz unless he's campaigning. They don't see the guy ever. Unless he's on Fox or unless he's campaigning, you don't see Ted Cruz.
Unless he needs something from them.
Does this come down to... And maybe we'll know this after the election, and it might be something to study for the years after. Is Texas changing? Is that why this is so close? Or does this come down to personality, where you have Trump with a let's say big personality, Cruz with a big personality, but you look at someone like Greg Abbott, you look at someone like Sean Cornyn, you look at even Dan Patrick, who has a big personality, but maybe not as well known. They still win big in Texas.
Great question, and I think it's dynamic, right? I mean, if you think of, and I'm not a big sports analogy guy, but let me make this this analogy. If you're doing sports betting and you're trying to figure out, how you could make the most money in this environment, I would bet on the Democrat. Here's why: because I would still handicap it for the Republican. Most folks would probably bet on the Republican because that's safe. You would make more money if you bet on the Democrat and it paid off. Right, just by the odds, and I think if you're trying to figure out which of two teams is going to win on Sunday, if you're looking at an NFL game, we'll keep it with football stuff. I think that you can look at everything from the position of stats and come down to what are the numbers. You've got one team that always does tackling and blocking better. That would be the Republicans. Which team always scores more often in Texas? That would be the Republicans. Which team is just better by the numbers is Republicans. But if you do that to the exclusion of what might happen during the game in real time, then you might be missing out on what's really going on here. And I do think that this is, and look, again, I don't make predictions. You know that. I'm almost evangelical about it. But this is probably the best chance that Democrats have had to punch through at a statewide level in a really long time in Texas. And, I think that when this is all said and done and the dust is settled, and like I say, in all likelihood, Senator Cruz is probably going to win. But at the same time, if they're able to win this way, how will they read it later? Is it because they also, on the Democratic side, have, let's just put it this way, a more boring person on the Democratic side, like you're talking about with Greg Abbott, or like John Cornyn, somebody who doesn't have the bigger-than-life personality? I think that's something that has to go into the calculation.
Let's also get into something else that happened last week, and this is and maybe in the weeds for some folks, but
always fun though.
You have this whole discussion going on about tax money being spent for film incentives in Texas. So what's going on there?
Well, we've had this program, and this is where I start to feel old. When I think about the fact that we've had the film incentives program in Texas since 2007, I was reminded that's 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was started under Governor Perry. And it's relatively, and this has been controversial before, where, there are a lot of, especially conservatives, folks who are fiscal hawks, who would say, why is the government spending any of our tax dollars to give anything to the liberals from Hollywood? I mean, This comes up a lot. But as you know, Chad, it's a relatively small amount of money. $50 or $45 million is what has been appropriated for this before, over each 2 years. That's budget dust. I mean, we have a $250 billion budget in Texas every 2 years. And so if you look at the money that's been put into this so far, it's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. But the governor's office says that the legislature was right to expand the amount. The last time that they were in session, they boosted it by $200 million. So now the state is spending about $250 million to try to attract these films and TV shows. Taylor Sheridan, who, of course, is the producer of Yellowstone, and more recently the show I'm into, Tulsa King.
Oh, that's so good.
Awesome. Are you watching it?
Yes, I'm all in on it.
Awesome. I'm with you. So, and I didn't really care for Yellowstone that much. I kind of thought, between us, that all the things people were saying about Yellowstone, they should be saying about Tulsa King. That's just me. Anyway, Sheridan is the guy who produced both of those, and he testified before the Senate Finance Committee in Austin last week, and he was talking about, and backing up the governor's office point, that when you put some money into this film incentive, and that can be for films and for TV, there is a return. Over the course of those 14 years, it's generated $2.5 billion in spending in the state. It's created almost 200,000 jobs, and what they say is a 469% return on the investment. And if you look at the decision that was made by lawmakers in the last legislative session to put more money into it, what they're trying to figure out now, Chad, is are they getting more back as they're putting more money in? And some of the objections from some of the senators kind of just made me chuckle, because we have some of our conservative senators like Donna Campbell, who's from north of San Antonio. She said, look, any show where they take, and this is the way she put it, if they take the Lord's name in vain, they should not get any of our tax dollars. I know a lot of people who would agree with that. But you also get into a First Amendment thing. If you're going to do tax incentives, does the state really get to say exactly what those scripts say? You know, when they're doing the TV and radio, TV and they should ought to have a radio one too, but TV and TV and film. And then some of these senators were saying, well, what about where they drop the F-bomb all the time, like on Yellowstone or on Tulsa King? Maybe they should. And I guess in Oklahoma, some of the conservative lawmakers there could make the same complaint about Tulsa King, right? Because believe me, the F word gets said quite a bit.
Yes, it
right?
does.
So I think it's an interesting ongoing debate, and there's going to be a lot more said about this in the next legislative session. But it's interesting to see some progress on this deal in a state that has been kind of reticent to do this before, where we really, have the government getting involved in trying to attract these movie productions. But this is just a fact. Other states are kicking our butts on this. I mean, a lot of the films that if you go watch the movies or you watch it at home on Netflix or Prime or whatever, if you watch through the end of the credits, very often, what does it say? Thank you to the state of Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia's big.
They're doing it all huge. You always see the big peaches on the screen, the Georgia Film Commission or whatever they call it there. There are, and in fact, this came up during their hearing last week. There are a lot of movies in which the story happens in Texas, but the movie is filmed somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because the film incentive was made available to the filmmakers to make their movie there. So it's a dynamic situation and an ongoing policy discussion. Always interesting, and we'll see what they decide to do with it next session.
Yeah, my favorite's when they have a TV show that they film, and it says just outside of Dallas, and there's a mountain. I like that. That's always fun.
It looks just like that part of Texas.
I'm like, where is that? I grew up over there. Where's that mountain at?
Is that Mount Collin County?
I never saw that before. I'm all in favor.
Mount McKinney or what is that?
Yeah, I'm all in favor if they want to drop or cut away some of the money because of F-bombs being dropped. I'm all for that, as long as we can also dock the pay of lawmakers who drop the F-bomb during session.
Oh, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I don't think
maybe they'll work
that
out.
Much.
Maybe they'll hammer that out.